I think my uncle may have poisoned me. Okay, this is quite the story, so it may be a long read, but I want advice on whether or not you think something is up or just a coincidence, or whether to call the police or whatever. Okay, so obviously from the title, I think my uncle poisoned me. This all started a little over a year ago. Now, a little background on this guy. He was my grandfather's kid, and my grandfather passed away, and he always wanted my grandmother's approval, but for whatever reason, my grandmother seems to like me better, maybe because we were related by blood, but he does a lot of things for her, like drive her to the doctor's appointment and so on, and I don't do all that much. Whenever he sees her saying I love you, giving me a gift, or telling me a baby story, he always seems to be quite jealous. Maybe I am reading him wrong, I don't know, but that is what it seems like to me. Also, my grandmother is leaving me a very large inheritance and not leaving him anywhere near as much. This guy is also very weird. He had some depression in the past when he got divorced and didn't clean his house or so on, and also he is very nervous. He'll say thank you a million times or apologize about things that a regular person wouldn't even think of. Like once we were at a drive-thru and his car didn't work, he said sorry 7 times and literally took the time to explain why his car didn't work to me. He lines things up in a perfect line. He will literally look at a TV remote for 5 minutes to make sure it's perfectly straight and is annoyed if anyone moves it from being straight. He also works for a car manufacturer in the body and paint section where he may have an access to chemicals. So, about a year ago, I moved into my apartment and was finished high school and going to university at the time. I was very healthy at this point. I could run a marathon in under 3 hours and bench 205, and keep in mind, by the end of this year, I could barely walk up a flight of stairs. So one day, he decides to visit and brought me dinner. Nothing I was allergic to, just french fries and chicken. He was over for about 15 or 20 minutes and said he had to go to work. It was nice of him, to be honest. About an hour later, my stomach hurts really bad and I go to bed. The next morning, I wake up and go to the washroom, and there is blood in my stool. My stomach hurt for about 2 or 3 days, and I have blood in my stool for maybe about 4 or 5 days after, but at this time, I thought nothing of it. About a month later, he visited again and brought a pizza. We were watching a show and catching up. He wasn't eating the pizza, and I said, "Hey, you want a slice?" He said, "No, I already ate, I'm not hungry." So in this whole visit time, I had to go to the washroom and was in there for about 10 minutes. Keep in mind, he could have done whatever he wanted to the stuff in my fridge. I didn't think this at the time though, so he left about 5 minutes after I was done because he had to go to work again, and guess what happened after? About an hour or so later, my stomach hurts really bad. Next day, my stomach hurts, and the day after, blood is in my stool, and this was like this for a month on and off. But when I got new groceries a week later, because I was out, I felt a bit better, but it took about a month for my stomach to feel better and blood in my stool to stop. Still thought nothing of it though. Okay, so about after 2 or 3 months, he would visit me regularly, and I was not only getting stomach pains and blood in my stool, now I was having a hard time breathing as well. My throat would be swollen, I couldn't really take a full breath, I was losing smell and taste, and my vision is blurry, my face is always swollen, I don't even know what to do. I went on like 9 or 10 doctor appointments, do all these kinds of tests, x-rays, ultrasounds, blood tests, different medications, and so on, but they found nothing, and saw on the breathing test I wasn't breathing good, and they could see that my face was swollen. I just thought I was really sick, and it's so weird but not obvious the thing the doctor would eventually find. At this point, I'm super tired all the time, like awake like 6 hours of the day and then sleeping the rest of the time. I can barely breathe, blurry vision, blood and stool, loss of smell and taste, and bad stomach pain, no appetite. I went on another marathon thing and was a hard time even just walking up the stairs. I really trusted my uncle because he's a close family member, and I didn't suspect anything at this point because I was consistently sick. So I was so sick that I actually had a hard time taking care of myself because of the migraines and blurred vision and so on, just super tired. So I trusted him, and I wasn't getting along with my parents too well at the time, so me and my uncle talked about it, and he let me move in with him, and he would help take care of me. I wasn't going to school at this point either. So when I moved in with him, he would always make me breakfast and wake me up when it was ready, though I would barely see him make breakfast. I suspect nothing at this point because I moved in with him, and so I completely trusted him. Within 3 days of moving in, I got even sicker. It was really weird at his house too. He would always go in my room and make sure that everything was perfectly straight, and he would go throw all my clothes out and weird shit like that. But he was really nice, always making me breakfast, buying UFC fights, and watching them with me, and so on and so forth. I had blood in my stool every day now, and my stomach was hurting badly, and I had a hard time walking and was always out of breath. The doctors found nothing in 6 months now, and I'm a waiting list for extra special specialists that takes a long time to see, and I was getting sicker and sicker at his house. I was starting to notice my clothes were wet and smelled like chemicals. I thought nothing of them, just being wet, I guess, and thought just the humidity of the place. And the chemical smell, I was starting to think something might be up. But when my mom came over and smelled the clothes, she said they didn't smell at all, and it was probably just because my messed up sinuses, because my taste was all weird and stuff like that. Anyways, I ended up moving back in with my parents and felt much better in about 2 weeks. The pain in my stomach went away, and the blood in my stool also went away. I still have a very hard time breathing, insane migraines, everything. It always smells like chemicals. No one else notices, and my taste is messed up. My sinuses are swollen. He visited a few times, and I got sicker 2 of the 3 times he visited, and now I really suspect something is up with this guy. I told my mom about it, and apparently she talked to him, and he seemed shocked. Keep in mind, this dude was really nice to me, and always bought like the UFC fights and so on, but was just really weird, and whenever he's around, I seem to get sick. If you made it this far, you're a legend. So what do you think? Is it a weird coincidence, or was this guy actually poisoning me? Clothes were always wet and smelled like chemicals at his house, and my stomach was hurting like crazy, but that stopped after he hadn't been around. Also, I still have very bad breathing problems, and everything seems to have weird chemical smells in my house, but no one else smells it. The guys was nice enough to let me move in and help take care of me, but was very, very weird. Should I just go and call the police or call the doctor again? I don't even know. What would you guys do if you guys were in my situation? Crazy Aunt ruins Christmas. There is a lot that happened within our family before this event, so let me explain. My mom's brother, who for the sake of the story I'll call Clark, has been married to this woman for over 20 years now, and they have one child together. Growing up, I've always been told that my aunt was a little off the rocker, and was instructed by my mother to stay clear of her if I had the chance. She seemed pretty normal to me, to be honest. Until I was around 10 years old. She started harassing my mother and my grandparents. She would hit on my grandfather and show up to their house unannounced, and would occasionally try to start fights. We had to block her on all of our phones, and my uncle was told that she was no longer allowed on ours or our grandparents' property. Years had gone by without much issue towards us. But for the past few years, she had always been mentally abusing my uncle along with my cousin, and once in a fit of rage, she peed on the floor in front of my cousin, yes, full on squatted and relieved herself. My cousin has since moved out. With all the background information out of the way, let's get to the main story. It was Christmas Eve a year ago, and as for tradition, we were having dinner at my grandparents' house. It was my grandparents, mom, dad, brother, uncle, cousin, and their dog Holly. We are at the dinner table, which is in view of the front porch windows, when we hear the doorbells ring furiously, and the door being pounded on. As we looked over at the windows, who do we see? Her. My uncle gets up and goes outside to talk to her. From the table, we can hear a bit of yelling, and my uncle opens the door to come back in, when all of a sudden she grabs the dog and threatens to take it away if my uncle didn't give her money. At this point, my parents are outside watching all of this, along with a few neighbors. My uncle gets in the car with her, and before she gets in to drive, she yells, "What the fuck are you looking at? I know I'm beautiful, and God loves me!" Then she gets in the car and speeds off. So, we are all at the windows, stunned and confused. All the while, my cousin is texting his father to make sure he's okay. He lets us know that he is, and that he's going to an ATM to get her some money, so that they would leave her alone. About an hour or so later, my uncle gets back with a dog and tells us that she was basically holding him hostage because he didn't give her enough money. But finally, with a bit of bribing, she bought him back, and I haven't seen her since. The rest of the night obviously had a lot of tension, and I watched the road behind us all the way home, scared that she was following us. Since the incident, things have escalated at their house. We have found out that she's doing drugs and has been cheating on my uncle for a while now. For those asking why, we didn't call the cops or anything like that. He told us not to. I don't know why, but he hasn't done much about her except tell her he wants a divorce, but nothing has come out of that. So, crazy aunt who has threatened my family, let's not meet again. My uncle and his really skeezy friend got me real shady one night. I had to lock myself in my house. Okay, so he wasn't my blood uncle. He was my biological aunt's brother-in-law. My mom used to date sketchy guys when I was a teen. I didn't live with her much because she was a horrible role model, so my grandmother raised me for a big chunk of my life. I'm very thankful for that because she taught me so many values and how to be a lady. I later moved in with my dad and stepmom and half siblings when I was 15 years old and had a wonderful life with them. When I was 14, I lived with my mother and her skeezy boyfriend Dale for a year in the upper half of a duplex. Her boyfriend had this friend that would come over very occasionally that just looked like the white guy from the Jerky Boys, same hair too, to be honest. And he creeped me out because he was always stare at me, and I would always catch him creepily staring at my ass and breasts. My aunt lived down the block that I would visit quite frequently because she was the cool aunt. She was in her 20s, super fun and really pretty, and had a 1969 Firebird convertible that we would drive around in and blast Aerosmith. This was the 90s. So with that said, I saw her brother-in-law, Jeff, quite a bit because he was renting out her basement. I thought he was kind of weird but an okay guy. So one night, at about 11:30 or midnight, I was home alone and I got a knock on the door. Our door had a square glass panel towards the top that was painted over with a little peephole scratch in the paint. I looked through and it's my aunt's B-in-law, Jeff. I opened the door and I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? He asked me if my mom or Dale, mom's boyfriend, is home. I said, no, mom was at work and God knows where Dale is. Then he asked me to come downstairs because he wanted to talk to me. I trusted him because I considered him family, and I was also pretty timid and didn't like saying no to people. So I followed him downstairs to the front porch. I see his car parked and still running on the street with the headlights on, and sitting in the passenger seat with the windows rolled down was the jerky boy looking dude that hung out with my mom's BF. I paused and I was like, and Jeff was like, hey, we want to talk to you. We want to ask you something. And he started to gently guide me to the car. My adrenaline started pumping, and I all of a sudden felt that something wasn't right. I stopped and pulled back a little and tried my best not to look scared. Jeb kept talking sweetly, running his fingers up my shoulder to fix my spaghetti strap and saying, it's okay, just come closer to me. And I pulled away politely and said it was okay. He can ask me right here. He kept sweetly trying to convince me to just come to the car so we could talk, and said that if I was so scared, I could just stand in the front of the headlights. The second he said stand in front of the headlights, my stomach did a leap and my whole body started feeling electrically charged because I knew if I were to stand in front of the headlights, I would not be able to see and it would distract me, thus making it easy for one of them to grab me. I knew right at that moment I was in a very dangerous situation, so I started acting ditzy and dumb because I was afraid that if they thought that I was thinking that they were trying to do something that could land them in prison, he would just grab me right then and there, cover my mouth, drag me to the car, and just so I couldn't tell on him. So I started playfully joking around and say that I wasn't wearing shoes and I didn't want to step in dog poop. Then I see Jerky Boy start to come out of his car, and then I just sprinted into the house so fucking fast and ran up the stairs and locked the door. I was shaking so bad. Then the Jerky Boy knocks on the door like a minute later, and he's looking through the makeshift peephole. He starts saying that he needs to talk to my mom's boyfriend. I say that he wasn't home, so he goes away from the door, but I didn't hear him go down the stairs. Then 30 seconds later, Jeff comes up and knocks and is talking through the door saying that he needs to talk to my mom's boyfriend, and he tries to open the door but it's locked. I said he wasn't home again, so Jeff starts saying things like, I'm sorry we scared you, honey. We just wanted to talk to you and ask about your mom and Dale, and other bullshit excuses. I was scared that they were going to try to kick the door in, so decided I was going to try to sneak out the back. I walked towards the back door, and thank God I looked out the back window first because I saw Jerky Boy standing downstairs at the back door. So Jeff was at the front door sweet-talking me, and his friend was waiting by the back door. I know what you're probably thinking right now reading this. Call the cops, call the cops! I don't know why I didn't. I think it was because I was so naive and timid, and this guy was my uncle. I was also questioning myself and my judgment because Jeff kept reassuring me at the front door. So I go to the front door, and Jeff is still there talking to me and telling me he felt bad for scaring, etc. And I tell him through the door, try my best to disguise any hint of fear that it was okay, that I was sorry I got spooked, and that it wasn't his fault. And I just try my best to placate him and convince him that I believed him. They eventually left, and once the coast was clear, I snuck out, ran to my friend's house next door. I didn't tell him anything, just said that I was scared, and I wanted to stay there until my mom came home. I didn't tell my mom though, but nothing really happened, and I thankfully moved to my dad's house, 45 miles away 3 months later, and I never saw him again. Edit. When I look back at it years after this had all happened, I realize that not only were they most likely going to sexually assault me, they were most likely going to kill me and dispose of my body in order to make sure that they would never ever get caught. Just after raping me, that realization, in and of itself, made me sick to my core.